Hello children, Sam's here to say hello. For our final story this week, we've got one of my favourite books. I used to read this book to my little boy when he was younger. Now, I'm going to give you some more clues because Sam loves giving clues, doesn't he? Let's see what our first clue is and see if you can guess or predict what you think the book is about. Okay, so the first one is a wiggly worm. It's not a real worm. I made this one out of Play-Doh. I created my worm out of Play-Doh. The next clue I've got a butterfly. We've got a worm and we've got a butterfly. And a plant pot. That's our next clue. And a watering can. And a rake. And a spade. These are our last clues. It's a bird and a bee. Have a think about all of those clues. What do you think the story might be about? You can tell your grown-up or you can tell Sam. Some wonderful ideas. Shall we see what the story's about? I'll put Sam down here so Sam can sit really nice and quietly. So children, today's book is called Eddie's Garden and How to Make Things Grow. And the author is Sarah Garland. There are some beautiful pictures in this book. Can you see? If you guessed it was about gardening, you were right. It's about gardening and growing. Let's find out some more. Can you see the really tall sunflower? That's Eddie and that's Lily. And Lily loves worms. We'll read the blurb on the back. Eddie watered the earth until it was soaking wet. Then they chose their seeds, sunflower and marigold seeds, nasturtiums and broccoli, purple chard and sweet corn, and a pumpkin seed for Lily. What wonderful food they're going to grow. How fabulous to be able to grow food in your own garden. Have you ever tried growing anything? Wow. Let's have a look. Can I have a garden of my own? Said Eddie. OK, said Mum. And me, said Lily. There's Eddie and Mum's digging with a fork. And there's Lily. Look, she's got worms in her hands. Mum wrote a list. And they went to the garden shop. What sorts of things do you think they might get in the garden shop? Let's have a look. Can you see all of the seeds? Lots of seeds to grow. Lots of different plants and foods in the garden. They bought seeds and a bag of earth and some flower pots. Pots for me, said Lily. Lily's put the pot on her head. She's funny, isn't she? Have any of you got little sisters like that or little brothers like that? Well, they're sitting round the dinner table having their lunch. What makes plants grow? Asked Eddie. What makes you grow? What makes you grow? What makes you grow? Food, said Eddie. Drink for me, said Lily. That's just what plants like, said Mum. Food from the earth, rain to drink, air to breathe, and sun for light and warmth. We were speaking, weren't we, about how important it is to make sure that we eat and drink healthily to make our bodies healthy. Here's Eddie starting to dig his very own garden. Let's get digging, said Eddie. It was hard work digging up the grass and weeds, but the earth was rich and crumbly and full of worms. "Stop that, Lily," cried Mum. "Worms are good for the earth, but they are not good to eat." "Worms for me," said Lily. There's Lily, look. Oh, she can't eat the worms, can she? Ooh, the poor worms. It's not very kind for the worms, is it? I'm glad Mummy told her to stop eating the worms just in time. Eddie raked the earth smooth, ready for the pea seeds. Mum showed Eddie how to scratch a line in the earth with a twig. So they're using a twig as a tool, look. They're scratching a line in the earth. And how to put the pea seeds in along the line, one at a time, and carefully cover them up. I wonder if that's something that you would like to do. Maybe we could think about doing that when you come back to school, couldn't we? Oh, I love this page. Look at what they are making. They're making a den. They collected some long sticks and Mum pushed them into the ground. "This can be a hideout for you and Lily," she said. "Bean plants will grow right up the sticks to make you a bean den." She dug a hole beside each stick and Eddie dropped a bean into every hole and filled each hole with earth. Lily's sitting right in the middle. Eddie watered all the seeds with his watering can. "Water me," said Lily. "No, don't," said Mum. They're having fun in the garden with the water, aren't they? Have you ever had water fights? It's great fun, isn't it? Now it's time for Eddie's bedtime story. When Eddie went to bed that night, Mum read him the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. I wonder if you know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm sure you do. Eddie thought about his bean plant growing up into the sky and how he would be like Jack and climb up the beanstalk higher and higher until he could touch the clouds. There's Jack. He's thinking, he's using his imagination, he's being creative. Would you like to climb up so high past the clouds and touch the clouds? What land would you end up in, I wonder? Next morning, Eddie wanted to sow more seeds. "Let's put some of these in pots," said Mum. "Then we can look after them more easily." So they collected flower pots, seed trays, yoghurt pots, an oil can and one old boot and filled them with earth from the bag. Eddie watered the earth until it was soaking wet. Then they chose their seeds: sunflower and marigold, seeds, nasturtiums and broccoli, purple chard and sweet corn, and a pumpkin seed for Lily. Look, they've got a vast array of lots of different seeds. So they've got a really big selection, lots of different sorts of seeds that will grow into food that they can eat. I wonder if any of you have been growing while you've been having to stay at home, if you've been growing plants or flowers. Maybe not this time, maybe in the summer or the springtime you did. They put in their seeds carefully and covered them up with earth. "Pumpkin for me," said Lily. And she dug up her pumpkin seed to see whether it had grown. "Put it back, Lily, it doesn't grow that fast," said Eddie. Uh-oh, look, she's taken the seed out. Remember, the seeds need lots of different things to grow, don't they? Can you remember what they need to grow? Lily's very, very excited. I think Eddie's a really good big brother. Days passed. The rain rained and the sun shone warm. Every day, Eddie and Lily looked up to see whether their seeds had sprouted, so if they'd come out of the ground, if they'd sprouted. At last, a strong green stem pushed out of the earth. It was Lily's pumpkin plant. It straightened up and opened 2 fat leaves. Like me, said Lily. She's so excited. You can see the leaves are sprouting out. Soon, all the seeds were sprouting. Can you see the labels so that they know which ones are which? There's the boot. They've put the soil and compost in the boot. Carrots, peas, marigolds, broccoli, sunflower. So many. Eddie worked hard in his garden. He watered the plants when they were dry, and he pulled up the weeds. When Lily's pumpkin plant grew too big for the pot, he showed her how to dig a hole in the garden to plant it in so its roots could go down deep into the earth. Hey Lily, maybe that hole is a bit too big, said Eddie. Oh my goodness gracious me, there's a really, really, really big hole, and Lily has gone into the hole, hasn't she? Then he dug a hole for his sunflower plant right in the middle of the garden. As the weeks went by, it grew as high as Eddie. Then even higher and higher still, until a fat bud grew at the top, which opened out into an enormous sunflower. Look how tiny the sunflower was, and it grew taller and taller and taller and taller. You ever grown a sunflower? Grandad came round. He was so surprised he had to sit down. Wow, Eddie, your garden is amazing. Look at all of the things that are growing in the garden. Oh, look, and there's the den that they made. Can you see how all of the leaves have covered now the sticks? There's some birds as well. A wheelbarrow. What an amazing garden. I think I'd like to visit that garden. They walked around the garden together. Do you know what, Grandad, said Eddie. Some caterpillars eat lettuces, but birds eat caterpillars. And some bugs eat leaves and flowers, but ladybirds and hoverflies eat the bugs. And bees make honey from flowers, and we like eating honey. Worms for me, said Lily. Well, worms mix the earth up, and that's good for plants, said Grandad. Eddie found a slug. Oh dear, said Grandad. Slugs eat up plants in the garden, especially at night. Oh, said Eddie. Eddie's beautiful garden, the slugs are eating plants in Eddie's garden. Oh dear. That night Eddie couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about slugs, munching and crunching in his garden. He went downstairs in his pyjamas. What's up, Eddie? Called Mum. I'm going on a slug hunt, said Eddie. Wait for me, said Mum. By torchlight and moonlight, they soon found 16 slugs. That's a lot of slugs, isn't it? That were eating up Eddie's plants. They put them in a bucket for Mum to throw away and then went back upstairs. That was a brilliant idea, Eddie, said Mum, as she kissed him good night. There's Eddie and his mum picking up the slugs at night from the garden. The next day was fine and sunny. Perfect for a picnic. Eddie, Lily and Mum went out into the garden and picked peas and carrots and lettuces and sweet corn and a big pumpkin There's Lily pulling the carrots out of the ground. And Eddie's got the pumpkin. Mum cut the pumpkin up. We'll keep some of these seeds to grow next year, she said. Eddie rolled out pastry for pumpkin pie. Peas for me, said Lily. So all the things that they've grown in their garden, they've taken them into the kitchen and they're going to make some food and a picnic. Out in Eddie's garden, birds ate sunflower seeds, bees and butterflies drank nectar from the flowers, and creepy crawlies were busy in the earth. Eddie, Lily, Mum and Grandad ate their picnic. It was the best ever. Oh, it just puts me in the mood for having a picnic. Maybe we could have picnics in our gardens, couldn't we, at the moment? There's pumpkin pie. Thank goodness Lily is eating carrots and not the worms. After the picnic, Eddie and Lily sat in the bean den. Which do you like best, Lily? Worms or beans? Asked Eddie. Beans for me, said Lily. So she's eating the beans. I hope you enjoyed that story. In the back of this book, there's lots of information about the different plants and things that Eddie grew in his garden and how to grow some of them. So that is one of my favourite books. We spoke at the start of the week about how we can express ourselves and be creative. I wonder if any of you, after listening to me read to this book, have thought about what sort of things you could grow in your garden and what food you can make from it as well. There's also another book by the same author, and it's called Eddie's Kitchen, which is all about cooking, and it's got some lovely recipes in as well. But the one we've read today is Eddie's Garden. I hope you enjoyed the story, and maybe it's given you some ideas about growing some plants. If you haven't got a garden, you could maybe see what you could grow in a plant pot on your windowsill. Thank you for listening.